Good evening. It is September 24th, 2025. This is the Budget and Public Employees Committee. It is currently 6:04. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devoti.
Present.
Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Velasquez. We have 3 present.
Thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, we have established a quorum. We'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, September 4th, 2025.
So moved.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devoti. Chair Aldrich.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Velasquez. We have 3 aye votes.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. With that, we have approved the minutes from Tuesday, September 4th, 2025. Item number 4, board bills for review. We don't have any. Item number 5, resolutions for review. We do not have any. And item number 6, committee discussion will be discussion item number 1, which is Rams funding. Today is our third meeting, our third monthly meeting that we're having around Rams funding. Just for the public to be aware of, the Board of Aldermen a few months ago passed $30 million against the Rams interest, not the principal. I think roughly we still have about 290-ish around the actual Rams money. In that board bill, there was an amendment offered by Vice Chair Browning that we make sure that there's transparency and accountability with these funds, and that the Budget Committee hold a monthly meeting to ensure that the mayor office, as well as the members of ENA, the president, the comptroller, come in front of the public to inform us on updates on how that money is being spent. So this is our third meeting to get an update from the mayor's office, as well as hear from the public on what they heard from the Rams report from the mayor's office. So with that, we'll jump right in to be efficient on time, and we have Mr. Jim from the mayor's office to provide a presentation, as well as Director of Human Services, Mr. Pearson. And whenever you guys are ready, you may proceed. Just state your first and last name and let the clerk know when you're ready to go to the next slide. And make sure your mic is turned on. I think it's red. Nope, you got to push the button.
All right, is this good?
That's good.
Okay. So my name is Jim Hill, and I am a member of the Recovery Office, and am the Chief Financial and Cost Recovery Officer in the Mayor's Office as a member of the Recovery Office. And I'm glad to be back in front of this committee again, so thank you. This is my second time. So we've had a lot of activity since the last update, which was September 4th. Let me advance the slides. Okay. So since September 4th, we've got an additional $7 million of funds in deployment, which means we've got about $7 million left of the $30 million to be deployed. We made significant progress in a couple of key areas I just wanted to highlight here, and I'm going to let Dr. Adam Pearson talk in more detail about. One is the grants through the United Way that the United Way is administering for nonprofit operational reimbursement. Disaster case management is getting ready to launch. We awarded contracts for logistics and to turn 219 vacant units into available intermediate housing. And we've also got a team from AmeriCorps on the ground doing community PPD. Dr. Pearson?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Pearson. My day job is the Director of the Department of Human Services, and other role that I hold is as the head of the Resident Wellbeing Task Force, which is responsible for overseeing the deployment of some of these Rams dollars. Certainly not. I can get into that a little bit. Some of the information on this slide you've seen before. I think we presented on this the last time we were here. I can pause in case you have any questions right now about it, or if you want me to just give a very high-level overview. Okay, very high-level overview. So we have with the RAMS money, we have broken out what the ideal deployment would be into several different buckets. Number one is the community resident services / cooling. The reason it says cooling is because when this money was first deployed, it was very hot outside. Now that we are transitioning into cooler weather, this will also include warming activities as well. Talk a little bit about on the next couple of slides. We have money that we have allocated for resource hubs, and so right after the tornado, there were a number of resource hubs that popped up throughout the 3 designated zones. Many of them sprung into action the night of the tornado or the day after, passing out supplies to the community, building materials, tarps, boards, bottled water, diapers, food, things like that. Truly heroic work that we believe saved a number of lives and certainly helped to stabilize families in the early of the response. Some of the funding for the resource hubs would be going to sort of bridge a gap between the work that we're doing right now with the resource hubs and later on what we call the resilience centers. And so these would be locations embedded in the community that would have expanded services, potentially disaster case management, potentially legal assistance, mental health services for tornado survivors. So some of the money would be going towards assisting those organizations operate. For intermediate housing, this is not my area necessarily, and so I'm only going to delve into the third bullet point, which is the disaster casework. Disaster casework is another word for disaster case management. So typically after a major disaster, households need an opportunity to continue getting back on their feet. Very grateful that FEMA came in with some assistance via the assistance program and some of the household assistance that has, they've helped to fill some of those needs. The state, of course, has stepped in with an allocation for the city of St. Louis too, which is great. But a lot of families still need some support after that, specifically with the ability to help manage the different levels of funding that they receive from FEMA, from the state, potentially from the city government, making sure that we don't duplicate those funds. I think there's a risk where if families receive funding that is duplicative from multiple sources, then they may have to pay FEMA back. And that's certainly something that we don't want. So what disaster case management does is help individuals to navigate that financing process as they reach their destination for recovery. I won't delve into debris removal too much because, again, it's not my area, but some of the funding for the RAMS money has been allocated for those purposes. And then also for the recovery office, staffing and consulting services to help us organize the work. Project management is a key part of a lot of the day-to-day activities we engage in. And certainly we needed some of the RAMS money allocated for those purposes. Okay, for just a status update, and I'll go through some of these, and there are at least a couple of items that may take a little bit more discussion. If you guys have questions, happy to answer them, but a few more details on these dollars since the last time we spoke to you about a month ago. So part of the deployment of the RAMS money included the nonprofit grants. And so we call those nonprofit assistance grants, or these are monies that were deployed to assist with nonprofits who started spending down some of their cash right after the tornado in order to help the residents in St. Louis City. And so I had mentioned before, this would include resource hubs that sort of stood up, or organizations that did housing or case management, clearing out trees, for example. So nonprofits that help to sort of stand in the gap, meet a need in the community, and they were spending a lot of, excuse me, a lot of their own money to make that happen in the early days. we wanted to provide some money for these organizations to possibly receive some reimbursement for those costs. And so we've partnered with United Way as a fiscal agent for a lot of this money. And through United Way, we have developed a process by which we released a NOFA. Organizations that were verified nonprofits could apply for this NOFA, submit to the United Way receipts and payroll stubs and a narrative about what they did. All of this documentation that says, yes, we spent money. Yes, it was for this purpose. We were helping residents in the city of St. Louis. And so to this day, we have received 70 applications. Applications have closed. They closed on the 19th of this month. A total of $4.3 million was requested out of a line item with $3.5 million available. Thus far, we're still in the application review process, but we have approved 15 of those. There are a number of applications that we are still waiting for additional information for before we can make an award for funding. The process is if somebody applies and they submit to us some documentation and we realize, you know what, we're interested in this proposal, but we need a little bit more just to make sure that the RAMS money going out is based on an actual expenditure that can be tracked. We ask them if they can provide some additional supporting documentation if we don't have it in order to make a determination. The committee is very intentional about giving organizations an opportunity to submit that additional documentation because we want to make sure that that is spent down. So we do have a number of organizations that we're waiting to hear back from, and once we hear back from them, then we can go ahead and move forward with that award determination. 44 applications are going to be reviewed over the next couple weeks. We have denied some applications, 11 of them primarily because they were not verified nonprofits without a letter of good standing from the state, or they didn't have nonprofit status with the IRS or the state. There were some individuals who applied for this funding as well. They are not nonprofits. I think because of the way that the ordinance was written to support the deployment of the money, we could not award it to those individuals. Some organizations were denied because they submitted an application without any supporting materials whatsoever, and after we reached out, they still did not submit materials. And so we just want to make sure that we are stewards of the public money. It is possible that some funds may be remaining depending on what the awards will be for the next 44 applications that are reviewed. And if that is the case, we hope to reallocate that money towards a different cause. The preference would be disaster case management, which is on this next line, or unmet needs. So for disaster case management, we have identified 4 organizations that we're going to use for disaster case management services. Number 1 is Catholic Charities. They plan on hiring 10 disaster case managers. Salvation Army plans on hiring 10. LifeWise and Hope each hope to hire 2 disaster case managers. We put 26 on the slide, but that is an error on my part. It's supposed to be 24. I think we might have been including some of the supervising staff in that number. So it's supposed to be a total of 24 disaster case managers that are hired across the city with these 4 organizations. And so the money that we have for that allocation, we want to bring to at least $2.1 or $2.4 million to help close the budget gap that we have. I think that the disaster case management line is extremely important because that's the line that's going to help all of these thousands of families navigate this FEMA process, the appeals process, fiscal management process. For the legal services and mental health line, we had 1.1 million designated for that. These are NOFAs that previously were put out into the community for services for residents that expired on the 19th of September, but we want to reissue that to make it due on October 3rd, just to allow for more organizations to apply for that money. Ideally, what we would do is be able to sync up the services, the legal services and the mental health services with some of the work in the community that is presently being done, that could be done at the resilience centers or could be done at other places in the community wherever people need help. For unmet needs, this is a category that is defined by the Long-Term Recovery Group, which is a group of organizations that help to steer city organizations to support residents after a disaster. Typically, in the recovery process, there are lots of random things that pop up when you're helping families get back on their feet. Maybe somebody needs storage for furniture because potentially their home is unlivable, but they don't want to get rid of their furniture, so they need to put it in storage. Maybe somebody needs to buy appliances for their new apartment. Unmet needs is a category that United Way and disaster case managers will have access to when somebody registers for disaster case management. A team of individuals will review what the need is for the resident and can potentially tap into that unmet needs line item to help distribute whatever it is to the families. For hunger relief, there are a number of families that are out there that no longer have kitchens or struggled with food needs in the community. We know that there are food providers that are doing some amazing work providing food boxes, supporting food pantries, that sort of thing. The idea is that we can provide some stopgap funding or some a contract of 1 year, maybe longer funding for these organizations to help support families as they're moving into their next residence. For cooling and misting stations, this is money that has already been deployed and spent down, and so what we did is within the zones there were a number of misting stations and water stations that were set up in collaboration with the health department, the water division, fire department, public safety, to make sure that individuals in the community had access to drinking water, access to misting stations when it was. I believe most of those stations have been turned off because the weather is changing. For cooling and heating services, we still are in the process of developing strategy for the $0.9 million. For this, there are a number of different uses that we've explored. One is to fund some warming centers in the community. Typically, the city of St. Louis makes use of libraries and senior centers for warming in the winters. We want to allow organizations some funding to expand upon that work, especially considering that there may be some additional people who are in need of daytime warming as it gets colder outside. For this slide, I'll dive a little bit into the first couple of lines, and then what I might humbly do is defer to some of my other colleagues who are leading the intermediate housing work. That is not necessarily my work, and if Jim wants to speak to it, he can. For the resource hubs, I had mentioned that we are working to support resilience centers out there. We're working to make sure that some of them are funded. We're still developing a strategy for what exactly that looks like. But what we do know is that those hubs will need to be supplied with supplies. And so if you've ever been to a resource hub, they have a lot of different types of supplies there. Some of these supplies were donated. Some of these had to be purchased. And so we do have a line item specifically for the purchase of some of these supplies that would end up going to the resource hubs. Early on in the response, we were very fortunate to have a number of supplies come into the city for the use of the city government to distribute to some of these resource centers. I think the further out we are from the tornado, we can expect to see a dip in some of these donated items. And so we do have this line item to help us bolster the purchase of some of the supplies that are needed. We have partnered with Diamond Divas to do some of this distribution work. Diamond Divas traditionally is a domestic violence support organization that has done some fantastic work in housing. And now after the tornado, they have added to their mission of helping to work logistics and helping us to support the warehouse we have on Martin Luther King Avenue. And so we're able to distribute some of the supplies we have in our warehouse to the community using the work of Diamond Divas.
I'll talk about it. So I'm not the housing task force, but I will share with what we've done. The focus is on repairs and intermediate housing, $5 million for repairs, $5 million for intermediate housing. We've deployed $2 million of the $5 million for repairs, and that's being administered by CDA. We have also, since the last meeting, we awarded 4 contracts to turn 219 vacant units over the next couple months and make them available for residents to move into, and that's at Homer G. Phillips, Parkview, Murphy Park, and Fox Manor. And in the spirit of transparency, as we're awarding contracts, we're including exhibits in the back of this deck so so everyone can see exactly who has received what. And then we've got $2.3 million remaining to go on this intermediate housing, and what the objective is finding units that we can get ready for people to move into and get them moved in prior to the winter. And then Adam talked about the resident transition case management from the non-congregate housing and getting them to more intermediate housing. On the next slide is
Jim, if you wouldn't mind pausing for just a second, we lost internet, and
okay.
I think we're trying to make sure everyone can follow along at home, or at least that we can record. So just hold up 1 second while we figure this out.
Okay.
We are back from a little recess, and we're going to continue the presentation on the housing section.
Okay, so a major focus of the RAM's settlement interest is on home repair and intermediate housing. So $5 million has been allocated towards home repair, of which $2 million has been deployed through the Healthy Home Repair Program that CDA administers. There also is, since the September 4th last meeting, we awarded four contracts have been awarded to turn 219 vacant units into available housing by the winter time at Homer G. Phillips, Murphy Park, Fox Manor, and Parkview. In the spirit of transparency, you'll see the how many units at each location and who's overseeing the work. And then, as Dr. Pearson mentioned earlier, there's $500,000 of resident transition case management, and this is case management to help residents get out of non-congregate shelters and other temporary housing in intermediate housing by the winter. On to debris removal. There's been $5.35 million allocated to that, and $5 million of that is going to go to a contract that we are in the process of selecting the bidder for, related to the very first step for private property debris removal, which is the thing we have to do first. We have to get rights of entry into the private property owners. So we have to figure out who has the title, where's the title. We have to get approval from them to be able to get onto their property and remove the debris removal. That will also include hazardous site assessments and then structural assessments, with the idea when we're done, we will have, to the extent a home is repairable, we will have what needs to be repaired and be able to take that into home repairs. We also have, we're providing dumpsters and other materials to community groups that are doing private property debris debris removal. The first such group is AmeriCorps. They started in late August, early September, and the plan is to clean 60 to 80 homes a month. The last thing is within the RAMS money is a recovery office. We have the recovery office up and deployed. It's running, it's resourced, and then we have brought in FEMA public assistance cost recovery consultants that started on the ground on September 9th and are quickly working through some of the major cost areas incurred after the tornado. Just really quick, I wanted to update you on a couple things related to cost recovery. So the city, this is not RAMS money, the city has spent about $15.5 million of its money that is eligible for reimbursement from FEMA or SEMA. And this is where the cost recovery consultants come into place. So you have to go gather up the costs, you got to document it, you have to submit it, it has to get reviewed and audited and approved. We've submitted about $8.5 million of projects so far, and we have another $7.5 million we expect to submit by the end of the final thing is the great announcement last Thursday that the state is going to take over the private property debris removal. The state's work will be on the private properties that are eligible for public assistance. So there will be a lot of properties within the city that aren't eligible for public assistance that the city will have to take on. The good part about the public assistance, those costs will be 75% funded by the federal government and 25% funded by the state. And it does not touch, so there's still a lot of details. So this decision was made at the highest levels, the governor's office and with the federal government. So there's a lot of details. The people that we're on the ground with working every day, FEMA, SEMA, they haven't been privy to those details. So we're still figuring out those details. But the $100 million that the state gave us in Senate Bill 1, that is for us to spend, we believe, on private property debris removal. That is not eligible for public assistance. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's separate. And there's some things that are not black and white, but in terms of eligible FEMA reimbursement costs, and they reimburse 75%, is eligible property that's owned by a private owner that has title to it that was not vacant or damaged prior to the tornado. It covers building demolition and debris removal, mixed tornado waste debris, hazardous trees that are arborist certified, so trees that need to be taken down on their property, and then hazardous household waste. The stuff that we believe we'll be on the hook for is previously condemned structures, previously hazardous structures, those that weren't condemned but that were clearly vacant or damaged prior to the tornado, and where brick salvage is something that we have to figure out, will that be FEMA public assistance eligible, or is that something the city will take on? And then there's some kind of in the middle, basement removal and backfill, and removal of parking pads, steps, retaining walls. What the city wants to do is to create investment-ready plots in the tornado zone. So more to come on that. I know that Mayor Spencer, Casey, and Julian are working to get a meeting with the governor's office, and they're hoping to get with them early next week.
Gotcha. All right, before we go into questions, we're going to actually jump to the public to hear from them first, and then go into questions from the aldermen. If you would like to sign up, please come on up front. You can sign up on the sign-in sheet. You have 3 minutes. And Madam Clerk, do we have people online also?
No one's raised their hand.
Okay. No one's raised their hand. If you are online and you would like to sign up and you're in the wait, or like to speak and you're in the waiting room, just please raise your hand and our clerk will move you over. But for the people in the room, by a show of hands. Okay, I see one person. Keep your hand up if you're speaking. Is it just? Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, you can come on up. Please state your first and last name, what ward you're in, and you have 3 minutes. You may proceed.
Danny Eichenhorst, and I think I'm in Ward 9, 11, and another one, I'm not sure.
We love when people live in multiple wards.
Thank you. Different businesses. Am I okay to start?
Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Danny Eichenhorst. I am the co-owner of Steve's Hot Dogs and the Del Mar. And my husband and I are here today not just as business owners, but as people that have been on the front lines of the recovery since the event on May 16th. And on behalf of all of the businesses in the impact zone. First, I want to thank you guys for your leadership. I know this is unprecedented and you're doing thankless work, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. In May, the tornado tore through our neighborhood and left obvious physical scars. But the thing that I think a lot of people are missing are the deep economic wounds in this neighborhood. They run deep, especially in areas like the Del Mar Maker District that have historically been underserved and overlooked. Our two businesses, along with so many more, invested in this area, hoping to do something different, hoping to create a gathering space for people from both sides of Del Mar to bring some vibrancy to this area. And in one afternoon, a lot of progress was erased. We chose to be in this community because we believed in a vision. And in the immediate aftermath of the storm, our team rallied. We emptied our fridge. We fed 750 people. We handed out 300 bags of personal supplies and groceries, partnered with a national nonprofit. We raised $100,000 for local businesses that were impacted, handed out 20 grants, $5,000 each. We've been going nonstop. We raised money and painted 25 murals along Del Mar, and then as we put our paintbrushes down and we looked around, we realized nothing's really changed. We've run out of ideas, and nothing's changed. All of our regular customers are gone, and I do speak for all of the businesses in this area to say that every day that we're open, we are operating at 30 to 50% under what it takes to keep the doors open. All of our regulars are gone, and it's a real issue. The truth is that we continue to employ 20 families throughout this disaster, even when we had no revenue coming in. And we have lost over $120,000 this year that insurance doesn't cover between our two businesses. At least one of our concepts is weeks away from closing, and the other one will close as well if nothing changes. We have not received tangible help from city or state, and while we appreciate a lot of friendly faces, when the only options available to you are to take on additional debt when every day you're getting deeper in debt, that's not a real feasible solution. We work tirelessly reducing hours and costs, but we are still bleeding. Insurance doesn't cover the loss of neighborhood and community and business. And so it's a real problem for all of the businesses in this district, and I don't see it as a line item anywhere to help them. We need grants, direct, forgivable support in days and weeks, not months, because we're heading into winter, and all up and down our area, people are laying off employees and shutting their doors already. So we're not asking for a handout. We are asking for you to co-invest in a vision that you guys have helped to create already for a more vibrant St. Louis. I feel like you guys are in line with what we're trying to do, and this is an area that's completely overlooked. You're spending, if you did allot anything to the businesses that are trying to make it through, wouldn't just be a line item. It would be about ensuring that our city remains a place that people want to visit, because what is left when everything is rebuilt if all of these institutions are gone? So let's not let the slow pace of rebuilding erase the progress that we have made. I'm asking you guys to please direct funds to our city's tornado-impacted business. By supporting us, you support recovery, jobs, and the heartbeat of neighborhoods that desperately need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the, I've heard the stories of the work that you guys have done in the Del Mar's Maker District. Just Steve Hot Dogs alone, I know all the businesses over there have been, coming together to try to support, but I've heard, I've seen, I watch the news a lot, so I've seen you guys on TV. Also, when your new building over on Del Mar was impacted largely by the storm, instead of worrying about your building, you start helping other folks over. So thank you, and your request is not going on deaf ears.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Any other comment from committee members?
Yeah, Danny, Miss Eichenhorst, as the alderman of Fountain on Delmar and Steve's Hot Dogs in half of the Delmar Makers District, I've seen firsthand everything you put into that business and everything you've done to try to bridge that Delmar divide. I think it's symbolic of this greater challenge we need to do in our city. And your investment in that is, I mean, you're rolling up your sleeves and you're doing it with your own money. And it's more than a lot of us do to make a difference in this city. So I think, like my colleague said, your request has not gone on deaf ears. I think this is something we're going to have to be looking at as we look into the future, because business corridors need to be there so that people have employment, so that people have somewhere to go and gather. These restaurants are where community gathers. It's where you take your family when they're in town. It's where you form those connections with your neighbors and your friends. And without them, we lose more than just food or drinks. We lose that sense of community. So I really appreciate you coming and speaking tonight. And I encourage everybody to go and visit the Makers District if you can. Support those businesses. It's the least you can do. I think it's getting tough. I know it's tough for all of us right now. We're looking at a recession, I think, and that's just going to make things even harder. But when we choose to spend our money, we can choose to spend it locally. We can choose to spend it in places where we are making that difference, and that's, I think, a personal choice that we all need to make as well. You certainly made yours, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. We definitely want to be there on the other side of this. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Anybody online, Madam Clerk?
I have a Miss Melanie Marie.
All right, if you can bring her over, we'll swear her in. Anybody else?
That will be all.
All right. Good afternoon, Miss Melody. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for being here. If you could just raise your right hand so we can swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, Miss Melody, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for the presentation tonight. I do appreciate being able to see tangible things, numbers, where monies are going, all the things. So thank you all for having these meetings every month. I stand here as a part of the People's Response, neighbors, organizers, survivors of the May 16 tornado, and residents who refuse to be treated like background noise in our own city. Let me be clear. I am upset. I'm angry, and I personally am hurt. Aside from organizational things, political things, etc., as a humanitarian, I am hurt. For months, we have watched STL Recovers morph from a promise of community relief into a marketing brand. The name is everywhere: press releases, glossy flyers, social media campaigns. I was walking down by Woles after attending a homebuyers event, and I noticed a screen kiosk with STL Recovers that is some sort of technological database, I guess, to show where resources are. I'm not sure why those funds are not being given to citizens impacted, but was not happy to see that. Families who lost homes, jobs, and stability still wait for resources that were pledged relief for them, has been replaced by photo ops, plans, and tech ops too now. While our children live with tarps for roofs and relatives sleep on couches, the city quietly allowed a $1 million property deal with the New Zealand developer tied to Paul McGee, paving the way for another downtown entertainment district. You call it redevelopment, we call it displacement. We see the pattern. The city shadowed our meeting, attended our events, mined our ideas born of pain and survival, then launched city-branded programs a week later called Plan STL, as if we are too weak, too distracted, or too uneducated to notice. Well, we notice, and I'm not being polite about it anymore. We are really demanding more transparency. Um, we are wanting to see more of these dollars hit the hands of impacted residents. Direct investments in impacted neighborhoods, not downtown condos, not entertainment corridors, or things outside of the impacted area, but College Hill, Academy, Walnut Park, all the blocks still scarred by the storm. Speculative property sales in North City should be held and halted. I noticed that there's another LRA meeting or tax sale meeting coming up in October, and we really need to halt those things until there's some community benefits agreements in place to see what we are going to do with this land. We also need more community control over recovery planning. I do understand that the committees are being formed, but we definitely need more oversight with that as well. This is no longer a request. We have been coming, we have been present, and we have been asking. This is a notice. The people of North St. Louis are not pawns in the developer's game. We are not content creators for city programs. We are the source of ideas, the labor, and the culture that makes St. Louis shine. So hear us clearly. We are tired, we are organized, and we are watching. If you want to truly recover St. Louis, the next move is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marie. Any more online? All right. All right, I will go into questions, and also thank you, Ms. Marie, for the work that you do with the people's response and all the organizing you guys have done during the tornado and continue to do. Next, I will go to question. No problem. Thank you. Next, I will go into questions from our committee members. I will start in seniority with my Vice Chair, Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I noticed that you had mentioned AmeriCorps is coming in to help out. Is that a new development, or is that something that's been going on?
As I understand it, they started in late August and they got crews out in the field. Their commitment or their plan is to clean 60 to 80 homes a month at a minimal cost to the city.
That's wonderful. That's good to hear. I was wondering if you had mentioned some additional meetings going on with the state. What are we looking for help with from the state at this time?
I think just really understanding the details of the announcement that was made last Thursday by Senator Schmidt, Governor Kehoe, and Mayor Spencer. What we know is that the state's going to take over the public assistance private property debris removal. That the federal government's going to advance the state $63 million to kick that off. The city will continue. We will do the rights of entry work, the hazardous site assessment work, and the structural inspection and assessment work. The $100 million Senate Bill 1 is separate from all of that, so that does not, that is for us to use. The 10% state match will continue to be applied against all the public assistance work, so all the work that's in process, all the debris removal so far, all the reimbursement of the emergency response, the police, the fire, the repairs to the jewel box, and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the details underneath that is still to be ironed out.
And this reimbursement that the city is trying to make sure we get, I know it's probably frustrating for people to hear because sometimes it takes a little longer to do things so that we can be reimbursed. But it strikes me that reimbursement is important because when you have such limited resources, we need to make sure we spend those limited resources as efficiently as possible. Is that your feeling too?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. And that's why we brought these consultants in. So they're going to make sure that we maximize what we're eligible for reimbursement for, and they're also helping us identify areas that potentially we wouldn't have thought of to look at.
That's great. I really appreciate the administration and the comptroller's office doing the best to make sure we can get every dollar we can from every spot or save every dollar we can. If we're looking at where our city's at, I think we've all acknowledged there is more damage and pain here than the money we have available, and also things that money can't fix, right? So this is one of those things where I think the diligence that's being shown here is something I really appreciate. And I just encourage you all to keep your head high. I know this is tough work, but you're doing good work on behalf of the city, and I do think in the long run, we're going to see a bigger benefit from this because we made those dollars stretch farther. So thank you both for your presentation tonight. It's very informative. I really appreciate all the information and transparency.
Alderman Devoti.
Mr. Hill, I want to follow up on Alderman Browning's question. There was some discussion about the public assistance aspect. That's a term of art. I don't know that you defined it during the course of your presentation.
Yeah.
To provide some context, can you tell us what that means in this?
Yeah, so it is a term of art. That's well said. So normally what FEMA funds is public property, the public emergency response, the city-owned buildings that are damaged in the tornado, the repairs to those buildings, the replacement of, we lost over $1 million of traffic signals, street lights, and street signs, and the cost to return those to their condition prior to the tornado. In this case, we got a special grant to do private property debris removal, which is a significant project, hundreds of millions of dollars. The federal government is going to have the state take that on. So they will actually be the applicant with FEMA for that work, and they will be reimbursed directly for their cost to do that. But a number of the private properties in the tornado zone are not eligible because they were condemned before the tornado. And so that's the distinction.
And then you mentioned that with respect to those that are not eligible, that does or that will eventually fall on the city of St. Louis. As we look forward, do you have a handle on from a quantitative, from a percentage basis?
Well,
how that's going to end up splitting out?
It's hard to say, Alderman Devoti. When we do this right of entry work and the hazard assessment, that's where we will definitively determine if it's eligible for public assistance and the state will take care of it, or if it's going to be something we're going to have to address. But it's 35 to 50% might be not eligible, but that's just a guesstimate at this point.
And then so let's talk about that right of reentry. We spoke about that a little bit the last time you were here, but I think I think for many folks that can be very difficult to understand. And essentially what you have told us, if I understand correctly, is that in situations where we have homes that have been within a family for generations, and perhaps title has not been cleared and title has become fractionalized, and there has been some destruction or maybe complete devastation. My understanding is that the city or any other entity cannot enter onto that property without clearing up the title first, from a perspective of obtaining authority, essentially, to do the job. Is that a fair synopsis?
Yeah, after a process to determine that we cannot determine, we can't get that approval.
And so for folks that are listening, the city, fair to say the city is working, but in some instances, that title issue must be cleared before the city can provide assistance. Yes. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
And the consulting firm, so we went through this process, and Alderman Browning, you talked about the speed with which we can move. We went through a process, so we got RFPs. We've narrowed it down to two. We interviewed the two firms today. We'll make a decision at a special selection committee. And I want to assure you that both of these firms have significant experience with similar title issues from other disasters and have the experience the best they can to work through this process and make sure that we make the right decisions for everyone.
And so my final question that I want to ask you, and you may know that I represent a ward that is completely on the south side, a ward that was very fortunate to have been unscathed by the events of May 16. If someone in the Fifth Ward is listening and they hear, for instance, on this issue of intermediate housing, that we have deployed, or we are in the process of deploying nearly $3 million to set up 219 units at 4 different facilities. They might hear that and say, well, that's a lot of money. 219 sounds like a bunch of units. But I guess from a standpoint of how many folks have we yet to help, or who are left out there to assist, can you, again, talk to us about the scope of the issue that remains today?
It's, and Dr. Pearson, I'm not the programmatic person, but there are thousands of people out there that are still in non-congregate sheltering, living on a friend or relative's couch in a house that they're staying in their house that maybe has a hole in the ceiling or a wall down, that in this weather, it's doable, but in a couple months, it's not going to be.
So I know that we have $2.3 million that is not yet deployed. Can you tell us a little bit what's on the horizon from an intermediate housing perspective?
They're looking for, so there's the housing team is looking for opportunities to house those people in different things. It could be a hotel that's got space. It could be maybe a hotel that's not being used right now that there's a direct leasing assistance that we can set up to cover them during the winter months.
And so when we look at Exhibit 3 and you have cost per unit, what does that particular cost purchase? Is it, I'm thinking in terms of months or a particular term.
It's repairs to those units to get them livable.
I understand. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I want to get a little bit into the numbers. So on the first slide, you say as of September 4th, and now I want to say, what is today, the 24th, so about 20 days ago is you kind of give a layout of 6.9 funds was deployed since the 4th, so a total of 22.8 million. Can you give us a number of, as of 9/24, how much money has been deployed and how much money is still sitting left of RAMs?
So the deployed number, that $23 million number total, that's as of 9/24. But it's stuff that it may not be spent, but we've awarded contracts to be spent, or we're in the process of awarding contracts to be spent. And there is some money some of that has been spent.
Okay, so since the 9/24, that 7.2 million that was left, have that been spent at all?
That's the amount that's left as of today, the 7.2, that hasn't been spent or committed to be spent.
Okay. Getting into some of these, I'll get into the housing, but first I want to touch on the debris. You mentioned that, so we allocated 5.35 million for debris cleanup, correct?
Yes.
But you mentioned that majority of, or not majority, there's a lot of homes or locations, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I read something in the post by Austin Hughlett that mentioned, and maybe he wasn't the one, he's just in the room, give him a shout out, but the post that put some that LRA has about 200 of those homes, and those would be considered vacant or nobody staying there. So those 200 homes would not even be eligible for reimbursement by FEMA, correct? Like all of the city LRA homes that are sitting vacant would not be eligible for debris cleanup that are sitting next door to people's homes that are eligible. In short terms, the LRA homes are vacant, so they're not eligible for reimbursement.
I think that's correct, but can I get you a definitive answer to?
Yes, but if I'm hearing you right, you said anything that is vacant or anything that is not habitable or nobody was living there, no, none of those funds.
Yeah, the vacant, I need to double check on that, the vacant part.
Okay,
But if it wasn't habitable at the time of the tornado, it will.
okay. And if it was, I guess, habitable, nobody was living there, would that,
I think that would be eligible. And LRA is an applicant separate from the city. So I'll have to check with Laura again and make sure I get this right. And
okay. And I'm not trying to hammer you at all, Mr. Jim. I just want to get,
No.
you know, for some of the people that's watching that, as we talk about this, that they can just kind of be clear on it. How, do we have a cost or have an assessment of how many parcels or area are private, how many homes are private that would need debris cleanup? So are we looking at 300, 400, 500 homes? And do we know how many of those homes are not, or how many of those homes are vacant?
we have that information. I don't have it.
Okay.
But there are at least a couple thousand parcels with homes on them.
Okay. So I'm assuming ultimately that that 5.35 million is it's probably just a scratch on the surface.
And that is just to get the rights of entry, and really for 2,000 properties to start.
Okay.
So it is just to get started, and we need to get started because we have to have enough properties that we can access for the state of Missouri to do their private property debris. And through that process too, we will determine which are eligible for public assistance that the state will run, and which are those that the city will have to address.
Okay, and you're saying that there has been conversations between the mayor's administration and the state to tap into that 100 million for the additional debris cleanup.
Yeah, a lot of those details still need to be out. But as I understand it, that 100 million is for the city to use for our private property debris removal. So
And we would clean it, and I guess they would pay for it, or we would pay for it and they would reimburse us?
we would pay for it out of the $100 million for the stuff that we do.
Okay. Let's get into the housing. I got some questions on some of the housing. We are, just about a month away from October, meaning we're about a month away from it getting cold. And I think when you was talking to Alderman Devotee, you said there's about maybe 12, did you say 1,200 people that still don't have housing, or roughly in that number?
I think it's more than that, but I don't have the programmatic details around that. I know the fiscal of where the money's going, but I don't have those details, but we have them. We have a pretty good idea.
Okay, so let's just say on a low number, we're talking about 1,200 people that don't have housing, and you guys have allocated 2.7 million for 219 units. One of those, Murphy Park, actually met with McCormick and Byrne today, and I know that's one of the units you guys are looking at. The money's allocated, but have those units been renovated to be turned over?
The work is just starting.
Okay. And then the 2.3 million, as you was talking with Alderman Devotee, those are areas that just still haven't been identified for more housing for people.
Right.
Okay. I do want to also, kind of mention what Alderman Browning said. I know this work is something that, this tornado was not something that people could plan for, right? And nobody was planning for it. And I know you guys are working as hard as possible to try to figure out some of these systems in place. But I'm not going to lie, my fear, especially as winter is coming, that a lot of these things are still, we're figuring that out, or we're going to get there. I mean, to not have I don't want to say not have a housing plan. The city already struggles monthly or yearly, and I know Dr. Pearson worked hard around this with our unhoused community, try to figure out shelters and stuff like that. And there's times where our shelter beds are full, and now we have a whole community of people right now that may not have housing, and the city's only identified 219 units, and out of those 219 units, they haven't even been, turned over ready for people to move into them, is giving me fear, one, that we don't have enough money, and just being transparent, as I was talking to Julian, if we're going to need to eventually tap into more Rams money, those conversations need to be started happening now, because legislation process does not move quick, and RFP processes that you guys are doing do not move quick, and we are a month away from winter. So I would really encourage you all to work with us, as you guys have been, to figure out how much money is needed, because clearly this money there's only a 7-something million left. That's not going to be enough. That if we need to get more Rams money out the door, like those conversations should be, happening at the end of this week, beginning of next week. But my fear is that we're gonna run into a spot where there's going to be people displaced from the tornado, and we won't have enough money for the units to be turned over, let alone putting people in hotels get expensive, and I'm sure that 2.3 million will run out very quickly.
Yes, so that is a concern that I believe it was probably May 17th as I was just driving around my neighborhood and through the zone, understanding that the scale and scope of the damage is immense. For those who have not gotten a chance to drive through some of these areas, it is going to take years in some cases for these individuals to get back on their feet. As you have correctly mentioned, each year the city does struggle with housing a lot of the unsheltered individuals, even as we expand the beds each winter. This year is going to be tough, and I think that we've started conversations certainly with partners, with COC, Winter Outreach, Mayor's Office, CDA, SLDC. We've been having some conversations about what additional services we might need just to ensure that people can have somewhere warm to stay this winter. I won't dig or delve into how much additional money is needed right now to, bring everybody inside for opportunities for shelter this winter. I know that that's, some more conversations that will be happening above my level. But what I would say is that I believe your observation is correct, Alderman, and that for a number of these solutions that will be needed to provide at least temporary housing for the thousands of individuals who are displaced, we can't do that with a balance of $7 million. And so I would say as is my position as DHS director, my position in the recovery office, I'm a full advocate of whatever funds could be released in addition to the interest money that we've already been granted, just to make sure that we can stave off some hypothermia events this winter.
And thank you for that, Director. And I'm a big believer in giving people their flowers when, before they hit the grave. Just for the people that are watching, behind the scenes, I know you personally, and we've worked on some stuff this last winter. I know you personally have done, when it comes to our unhoused community, just tremendous work. And I know I have some direct questions, but I do not want to, not also miss that. I know you do work every year around this situation with limited resources, also knowing that the federal government is pulling back even more resources for your department to try to help our unhoused community sometimes, which is complicated when, some folks don't want to go into shelter, but also don't want them to freeze. So I'm beyond thankful for the work that you do for the city of St. Louis, for our community, and I know it's going to be even, our unhoused community, and I know it's going to be even worse this year. I do want to back the bus up a little bit on the non-for-profits. So about 70 applications have been received. That would have been about 4.3 million. 15 were already approved. There's still 44 applications out there. I think, Director Pearson, you mentioned that some have been denied. What, I guess, is and this is something that's being third-partied out through, is it United Way that's given the application, the granting the funds?
That's correct. They're our fiscal agent.
What, I guess, is the delay? Because I know this was, the non-for-profit grant was probably the first thing of the RAMS money or RFP that went out maybe a month and a half ago, and we still have a large amount of application money that, not sure if we're, going to be able to spend it on these non-for-profits, or if we don't, then use it for other needs. What is kind of the delay on that process?
So when we first put out the NOFA, there was kind of a slow uptick in the number of organizations that were applying. I think, as you can imagine, I had referenced it earlier in the presentation, but directly after the tornado, a lot of organizations just stood up rapidly and they started doing this work. I don't think that in hindsight, a lot of these organizations knew off the bat, hey, we should be collecting all these receipts. Hey, we need to be tracking all of this. I think certainly, the early weeks after the disaster, a lot of us were literally in survival mode, including a number of these organizations that had affected staff and so it has taken a little while for some of the organizations to gather all of the material needed for submission to the NOFA for reimbursement, which is perfectly fine. We wanted to allow some grace for that. So we had, in the early days, we didn't have a lot of organizations submitting early on. It sort of picked up. I will say that last week, on Friday, on the due date, we made sure to sort of push out into the community, hey, FYI, if you started an application, get that application in, because today is a due date. And I think just in one day, we had maybe 30, 35 new organizations submit, right? And that's a good thing, right? Because we want to make sure that a number of these organizations have an opportunity to get reimbursed. So it is a slow uptake, I think, because we didn't have a lot of organizations submitting all the materials that they needed to. But I want to give a shout out to United Way. They've been extremely diligent and thoughtful about creating a process where we would extend, messaging to organizations that had started an application to say, hey, we need, some additional materials to make a deliberation for you. And we think that is paying off, the sort of second opportunity to reach out to organizations that have completed an application.
And was there an extension on the non-for-profit application? I see there was extensions for like legal services, mental health, hunger relief. Was there ever an extension on the?
There was not an extension for the nonprofit assistance application. And I think one of the reasons was because it was a very large line item in the early sort of part of the I think there was an understanding that we may not come close to spending down that line item. That may change depending on the applications that we still need to review. But the preference is that if there are any dollars left over, that allocate that to either disaster case management or the unmet needs category of $1 million in collaboration with disaster case management. And so didn't want to quite extend that just in case we needed to allocate some of that to residents who are really struggling in other ways.
Okay, just a few more questions there. On the cooling and heating non-for-profit, are you guys thinking to use maybe that 0.9 million for like organizations like Heat Up St. Louis that do work to help people with their utility bills? We know that Spire has put out a moratorium, but clearly Ameren doesn't think it's important to do that at the moment. Just my opinion, I said it. And bills are, It seems like these Ameren bills are getting higher each month. I'd be seeing on Facebook. So what is the plan for the cooling, as we're past the cooling phase, the heating phase with that money to?
Yes, so Victoria Anwuri, who is the Commissioner of Health for the Health Department, she and I have been working closely together for the strategy and deployment of that money. To your point, Heat Up, Cool Down St. Louis has been part of these discussions in supporting some of their efforts. I think I could, speak for the organization to say that they would probably want more than what we have in this amount. But we do know that for some of these funding, because the federal government is cutting back on the LIHEAP program for individuals who needed utilities assistance, there is a need to support people in some way. Heat Up, Cool Down St. Louis does have an avenue and an outlet by which to do that, so they have been part of the conversations. I think for the other side of things, for the remainder of that strategy, to the point made earlier about warming opportunities in the winter, typically in the winter, the city works with a number of organizations to set up warming centers. And mostly it is libraries operate prerogative, senior centers, maybe a couple of other organizations that have warming center activities. We want to fund as many new organizations as possible with this money as well, especially seeing as though there might be some existing facilities that have been used for warming that have been damaged by the tornado. So we want to use some of that money for warming centers, with the preference that we bring on some new warming centers to accommodate people who, for whatever reason, cannot remain in their homes during the daytime.
Again, well, winter's coming, so I'm sure you guys are working on that, or hopefully working on that. Just two more, and then I am finished. Resource Hub, 1.5 million. Has that been deployed, or is that money sitting?
Two different line items.
So not the one for Diamond Divas.
Yeah.
The 1.5 million. I'm trying to figure out.
So yeah. So the 1.5, that's broken down. Right now, we have it broken down into two different line items that make up the 1.5. So there's one line item for $250,000, which would be grant money to cover a few of the existing resource hubs, just kind of as a stopgap between now and potentially December. In December, the plan is for us to launch resiliency centers, which would have a broader suite of services for the community. It's like resources that we would give out, but potentially legal services, mental health services, other social work or humanitarian services that may need to be offered. And so the 250 is for the stopgap resource hub funding. The remaining 1.25 would be for the resiliency centers operating for at least a year. And so that money has not been deployed yet. Right now for the 250,000 stopgap, we are in conversations with at least two resource hub providers in negotiating contracts. And so that money will be deployed soon for the 250. For the 1.25, we're still developing strategy on that because we want to make sure that, the results of the NOFA for mental health and hunger assistance and legal services, we want to make sure we can include all of those things into the resiliency hubs that we eventually end up funding. So I think it just takes a little bit of a broader strategy to work that out, but we are close on deploying the 250 though.
Gotcha. One comment I do want to make. I'm glad to see some money on home repair, healthy homes. Please, with your office, please work with CDA to get that money out quickly. Healthy Homes Repair, that program has always been very slow to get funds out the door. And at a time right now, we need to get things out as quick as possible. My last question, and maybe it can come from this unmet need of 1 million will be dispersed along with DCM. There was I'm trying to find in all of this money, and maybe it can come out of the additional 7.2 million that is still sitting, of a commitment that was made to put $1 million, and I'm not seeing it anywhere, into housing, into impacted tenants fund, to make sure that people who needed relocation, I know that some of that was done through FEMA. We didn't want to recreate any duplicate resources, but that $1 million from the Rams money, that's why during the budget committee, we didn't move forward with it after passing the amendment, thanks to my colleagues on budget committee, passing that $1 million for impacted tenants fund from the reserve. We decided, after agreement with the mayor's office, that we would be fine with it coming out of Rams, and I'm not seeing it anywhere. Is that because my eyes are tripping, or?
Your eyes are not tripping, so that 1 million is not accounted for within the budgets that we have. I think that would have to be a separate allocation of RAM settlement money that is not accounted for in this table. I think for what we have presented here, especially what I'm sort of the steward over, which is a nonprofit grants, disaster case management, legal services, and all of those dollars will be accounted for with the NOFAs and the existing contracts we have. We won't have 1 million left over for the impacted tenants fund there. Not saying that it can't be found somewhere else, but for the work that we have allocated for this, all of that money is spoken for.
7.2 million is not allocated? Is that spoken for?
Yeah, that's not a part of my funding yet. So if we wanted to pull it from there, I would leave that up to the money people. But as far as what I'm over, we have that 1 million allocated.
Gotcha. Well, just respectfully, I would ask Jim in the recovery office, there's $2.7 million left. I think people word, it's always people, you got to go off people word. There was a commitment for that 1 million for impacted tenants fund. If it was impacted tenants fund or it looked a little different, I know the mayor was saying also people who may not be tenants, but also people who just need housing. You know, I'm not even seeing that money in this chart at all. So if we can get an answer on that, because I think we tried to come to an agreement if we wasn't going to pull it from reserves, and the budget committee could have moved forward with it that way, but we didn't because we was told it was coming from Rams. If we can get an answer on what is the next steps from that, so that that commitment can stay true to the commitment that was made from Room 200 on that $1 million. All righty. Any other questions from committee members? I got it all? Okay. Any other folks in the audience? Nobody online?
No, one online.
Okay. I really do appreciate, and I know this committee does, and every person at the Board of Aldermen understands the work that you guys are doing and do not take it for granted, and are thankful for it and want to help.
Someone just raised their hand.
Well, we will take them. And the last thing I will say that I think I already said, we're getting very close to winter, so please, if there is more funds that need to be added up, let's start having those conversations now so that we can get legislation moving, because I think it is important that we do it quicker than sooner. And of course, it will never be enough for the Rams, but anything that we need to supplement as winter's getting closer, we want to start moving on that sooner than later. All right, we will take this last person and then we will close out this meeting, but we want to make sure that heard that maybe got on a little later. Ma'am, who is online, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, please, you have 3 minutes to speak. You may proceed.
Could you please state your
My name
ward
is
as well?
Okay, my name is Julia Allen.
All right, Ms. Julia Allen, Please proceed when you are ready.
Okay, I just want to just make a general statement. I guess maybe I misunderstood the young man from finance saying that $100 million would be used for clearing LRA property. I don't think any money should be used to clear any LRA property. The city has had the opportunity to take care of their LRA property. Now you've got people like they're talking about who are homeless, who will be homeless, who won't have places to stay. I think that as our elected officials and representatives, all of the money needs to go towards making North St. Louis whole again. I think if you're talking about using $100 million of the Rams money to clear LRA property, that just does not make sense when you've got people who don't have homes to stay in. I don't understand. Maybe I misunderstood what you said, but I don't think any money, any kind of funds that come in, should be going to the city to clear their own property. They should be able to find money to do that. I think that doing something like that is a slap in the face to the people in the community. And like I said, maybe I misunderstood what he said. I think that all of the Rams money, all of it, needs to go to help the people in North City. I don't understand why that's such a hard thing when we're talking about funding entertainment districts and all of this, when you've got people in North City who are still suffering. And that's all I have to say. Like I said, maybe I misunderstood what the man said about part of the $100 million going to clear LRA property. I'm totally against that. That's not right.
Thank you, Ms. Allen, for being here. Yes, a little. He didn't say that the $100 million was going to clear LRA properties. The $100 million that's coming from the state of Missouri is supposed to help with debris removal. I asked if LRA properties would be eligible for reimbursement because those are vacant properties, and I believe that if they are vacant or non-habitable, that those properties will not be able to be reimbursed. So the city is not using that $100 million to clear LRA properties. Thank you. All right, with that, we will.
Have one more person.
Okay, go ahead.
Miss Amina L., could you state your ward as well?
Miss Amina,
yes, ma'am.
Yep, if you could just
My name's Amina Lobster. Oh,
state your first.
please continue.
State your first and last name and the ward you reside in, and then after that, you have 3 minutes. You can proceed.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name's Amina Lobster, and I reside in Ward 3. So this evening, I kind of just wanted to touch on a few things that were recognized earlier by various people as well. But my immediate concern prior to the presentation and also after the presentation concluded was the general need for housing. My first thing that I would like to bring to the attention is the Healthy Home Repair Program. I believe that Alderman Aldridge kind of already brought it to attention, but it was my understanding that the Healthy Home Repair Program was months behind prior to the tornado. So making sure that there's a clear process for applicants to get in quickly, them understanding what the parameters are, and also those who've been affected by the tornado, them having the ability to work with other partner organizations or nonprofit entities so they can still meet the barriers to the Healthy Home program, such as not having like correct deeds or titles or things of that nature, because I know that people will sometimes need help with that as well. So making sure those are in place. And then also in regards to the immediate housing and turning units, my biggest concern as a citizen, especially a citizen who's currently a renter, is what protections are we putting in place for these people that we have contracts with to make sure that those units that are being turned remain like safe and viable units long term. I know that there's a rush to get people in, but also we should be thinking about quality of life that's going to be maintained once these people occupy the units. So making sure that we have contracts. So if there are problem landlords or problem properties, the city has a way to execute properly, because I feel like that's something that the city of St. Louis struggled with prior to the tornado. And I want to make sure that anybody who's experienced the trauma of the tornado doesn't later have to deal with the fallout of dealing with a problem property or landlord.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Amina. All righty. I think that is the last person. We're closing out public testimony. Item number 7 is, do we have any written testimony?
We have none.
Announcements. I do also want to thank the Comptroller's Office and staff and the President Alderman and her staff during this time of working through a lot of these contracts to get these items done and to try to figure out how to get through in a time where this is kind of the first ever. There's still a lot of questions. I think Mr. Jim is going to bring those back, but I know those two departments also have been intricate in making sure that this process is getting through the process to make sure that these monies are getting out the door. So it is all hands on deck, and I'm thankful for both of those departments for also helping out. But we're going to need more hands on deck to get some of this stuff done. Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I do want to announce nothing to do with what we're doing tonight, but if you were planning on attending the conditional use hearing tomorrow at 8:30, just please be aware that the data center issue will not be heard tomorrow morning. That has been postponed. No new date for that yet. With that being said, we are going to have a Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee on October 1st at 3:30 p.m. here in the Kennedy Room and also online to discuss Resolution 111, which is accompanying the executive order that is putting new regulations and requiring new questions to be answered for data centers. So if you'd like to participate in that discussion, October 1st, 3:30 p.m., Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Alderman Browning. And all our meetings you can always find on Google, and you type in Board of Aldermen, and it will pull on up all the meetings. And I know next week will be a big one, so please show up to the Public Infrastructure next Wednesday at 3. With that, I will take a motion. I would like to excuse the Alderwoman from the 6th and the 7th Ward for necessary absence. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Previous row. Seeing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.